But enough with this abstract nonsense. What we are here to do is to code and learn to program. So let's start coding, writing our own functions. To do that, first let's go with a very simple one. We're going to try to make a function that reproduces this exact behavior. So how do we go about that? First of all, let's use the def reserved word to define a function. And here we have it. Then we have to complete the prototype, the interface that, as we have been saying, of this function. Basically, we need to give the function a name, and then we have to define the number of parameters and the name of each of the parameters that the function will use. In this case, I want to do a function that computes a simple polynomial. So let's call it just j, like that one was called. And what parameters does this j function have? Only x. Okay, so let's define that this function will have one parameter and that it will be called x. And to finish the prototype, the interface of a function, I need to write down this colon. Okay, here I have the definition of my function. It is important that this parameter is something that's abstract. So this function will receive one value, but I don't know what that value is at this moment. I don't know if this will be valued 3, 25, 78. Actually, every time I use this function, every time I call this function, we will say that we call functions. Every time I do that, this abstract parameter will take one specific, one real value. Okay, so we will speak about this a little bit more in a second, but basically I have used function, the def reserved word to tell Python that I'm defining a function, given it a name, in this case just g, and given a name to the parameters that this function will have. This will only have one, and it's x, but I don't know what value this takes at this moment because this is abstract. I'm doing an abstract definition at this point. Okay, what do I want my g function to do? It should receive one x parameter, square it, and add 23 to it. So let's do that. Have x. Okay, so this is the, let's say I could consider this is one of the variables that the function will work with. I will call them variables if I define them here. If I receive them from outside, I call them arguments. Sorry, parameters, as I have been doing. So let's square this parameter. I will just multiply it by itself, which also works. And then let's add 23 to it. This is the some code part. This is what my function is going to do. Okay, so I want a function that computes this. To complete my function, I need to return this. So I can, for example, put it in a variable called ret, R-E-T, and then use the return reserved word to give the result of my function back to whoever is using the function and whoever called the function. Okay, let's make one more cell here and let's just use the function. Okay, so I'm going to compute x squared plus 23 of 0, and to do this I'm going to call my function by its name and I'm going to give it one argument. My parameter is something abstract that I use to give information to input data to my function, and in this case now I need a specific value for my function. So I'm going to compute g of 0 and let's run all of that. And I get an output that's 23. So I have taken this 0 argument, specific argument, have given it to this function, which has read this value of 0 and put it here and here. So the parameter, the abstract part, allows me to model the behavior of the function. Okay, and it has multiplied 0 times 0 in this case, which is 0, and added 23 and returned it. Okay, notice that I don't need to do this in 2 steps. I can just directly use the return reserved word with the result of that computation, and I will get the exact same result. And now, every time I want to square something and add 23 to it, I just have to call g. I don't have to write that code again. I can call g of 5, and I will get 5 times 5 is 25, plus 23, 47. Okay, 23 plus 25 is not 47, it's 48. Okay, I was wrong. The code is right. Okay, then 123. Yes, that one was right. Okay, 100 should be 1023, shouldn't it? Yes, 10,023. Wow, definitely math is not my thing today. So this is a simple function that we have created with this behavior. This is very close. This is just a mathematical function. The point in programming is that we will be using other functions that do more general things than just do some mathematical computation. Let's see one very simple example. I'm going to call this function the double or nothing function. What will it do? Well, it will receive one value, so it has one parameter, and it will do a random draw. This function performs a random draw and returns the double of the parameter or 0, depending on the draw. Okay. To do this draw, I'm going to use this call to randint. This is also a function that someone else did before and that I'm just using. So if you notice, so far we have also already been using some functions when we used random. Okay. What we want to achieve today is to become a little bit more aware of that, and of course to learn how to create our own functions. So I'm going to call this randint function, and if I get a 0, I'm either going to get 0 or 1 randomly. This is what it does. It gives me 0 or 1 with equal probability. If I get 0, I will return twice the value of the parameter. And if I get if I get 1, I will return 0. Okay? And I will return this value. Let's just run it a couple of times. So this is called, to call the function, I have to write its name, double or nothing, and let us call it with argument value for our parameter 10. Sorry. Okay, nice. It's always interesting. Coding has these things. Sometimes you get errors. Why do I get this double or nothing is not defined error? It's right here. Okay, but I have not run the cell. So I have to run the cell first, and then I can call my function. And I get 20. Okay. If I run it again, I get 20 again. What if I run it again? Now I got 0. Okay. Let's run it, let's say 10 times. So let's create a loop using one function called range, which gives me a bunch of numbers from, in this case, from 0 to 10. And I'm setting up a simple for loop, and I'm going to first print the value of I in each step of the loop, and then I'm going to print to the result of double or nothing of I and see what I get. Okay. Okay. So let's make this a little bit clearer. I'm going to write here iteration, and I want to turn this into a string and write it down, and then I will put the result just beneath it. Okay. At iteration 0, I got 0. At iteration 1, I got 2. Iteration 2, I got 4, which is the double of 2. This is the double of 1. At iteration 3, I got 6, which is the double of 3. Iteration 4, I got 0, because the draw said that I had to get 0, and so on and so forth. Okay? Did 10 iterations from 0 to 9, and got all of these values by running my simple double or nothing function. To finish this part, let's just briefly recap what I already said about parameters versus arguments. Parameters are abstract variables that we define in the header and that are used inside of the function. Here we had one parameter called x. Here we had another parameter called x. We will see another function in a second where we will have 3 parameters called a, b, and c. And these are abstract. I'm just telling Python I'm going to receive 3 things here. In many programming languages, when I define the parameters of a function, I have to tell the programming language the type that this will have. I have to tell the language this is going to be an integer, or this is going to be a string, or this is going to be a list that we will be seeing in a while. But not in Python. In Python, I just give it a name, and then we'll figure it out what type each parameter is later. And then, as we saw, I also need the arguments. The arguments are the specific values. When I define a function, I'm defining an abstract behavior. I will receive something and do these things with that something. But then when I call it, then I want to know the value of this something that I'm doing for 0 or 1 or 2. This abstract definition is the parameter. These specific values are the argument. Okay, so I will have as many parameters as I need, and anytime I want to use a function, I will have to give one argument to each parameter.